Before we begin, thank you very much to This is your old intro speaking. Please just let me rest in peace for joining my Patreon campaign. Look, old intro. It's not my fault, okay? Okay? Like, you can rest in peace as long as you want, as long as people keep pitching into the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Any level of generosity there means I will give you a shout out, and yes, it can be silly things like this. So, old intro, you get to rest for as long as they want you to rest. It is out of my hands at this point. This whole thing has gotten out of my hands, but it hasn't stopped me yet. So, let's talk Beast Machines, shall we? So obviously it is Beast Machines here on the channel. We are reviewing the episodes one by one. We're about halfway through as I'm recording this, and a lot of things have come up that I've really wanted to discuss, but because we are limited in time there, we really haven't been able to dive into it. So today we are going to look at 10 major failings of the writing in Beast Machines, but just to add a little bit of a wrinkle, just to add a little bit of interest to this, one of them is not going to be characterization. We know it's bad that Rhinox became a villain with no explanation. We know it's bad that Rat Trap lost his confidence and became a techie out of nowhere. That Black Arachnia lost her edge in Primal Spiritual. But that is just old hat at this point. We talked about it to death. So we don't need to go down that path again. But I've come up with 10 examples of things that keep cropping up in Beast Machines that, in my opinion, seriously hurt the writing of the series. And number 10 is going to be something that is going to make the show a little bit more tiring. It has made the show exhausting to actually go through episode by episode for my reviews, and that is repetitive sequences. This is especially guilty in season 1, where they have a more limited cast and roster to handle. Most Viacon encounters in this show feel and look exactly the same way. Usually the Maximals are in the catacombs. Usually they're in beast mode, but for no reason they will get jumped by Viacons. They will get jumped by Viacons at a moment's notice. You know, maybe it's a loud sound. Maybe one of them transformed for just a second. And sometimes it just happens. But it always feels like Maximals are in the middle of something. Viacons ambush them out of nowhere, whether they are in robot mode or not. Chase sequence occurs. Maximals escape underground. And that is the majority of your encounters, the majority of your fights in this series. And considering we are in a series where, you know, the characters have like one or two abilities at best, it's going to feel the same a lot. It's going to feel the same a lot. You know, and to make it a little bit worse, this is the first Transformers cartoon I can remember that just straight up recycles footage for the sake of including more fight scenes. And I don't mean like they recycled animation sequences. You know, they do that with transformations all the time. No. I mean they just straight up reused fight footage from previous episodes to pad out other episodes. And guess what? Because all the fights look exactly the same and feel exactly the same, you wouldn't really notice. It doesn't hurt anything because it just feels old hat. And it's one reason why, like, even watching the show bit by bit now, it's hard for me to remember which episode certain things happen in, because they all look and feel the same. So, way too much repetition. It just feels like we're doing the same thing every episode. Even though the plot's moving, the action feels identical every time. There is a subject of references in this series that has been a debate amongst the episode reviews, and in this case, we're going to hit more than one of them. For now, we're going to be talking about one particular element of that, and that is how they handle the legendary artifacts of Cybertron. So, the Oracle itself can only connect to a receptive spark. You know, that's the reason why it waited until Optimus Primal returned to the planet before it started to do anything about this whole Viacon apocalypse thing. Except when the plot needs other characters to access it. The diagnostic drone can access it. Tankor cannot access it until later on when Tankor can manipulate it and actually send false visions to Primal through it. Megatron just downloads it. Megatron literally just takes the Oracle. Like How is this big, omnipotent supercomputer that is so infinitely powerful and like hardwired into the Matrix, and yet you can download it like a free copy of WinRAR that you're never going to pay the license for? Things like that. And the whole series is full of things like that. The key to Vector Sigma is just a thing that they download the info for and they 3D print out of thin air. And when you can do that, when you can just 3D print the key and it has the same functions as the original key to Vector Sigma, it just takes all the specialness. It's completely like basic now. It's not even special. This artifact that was like incredibly important is now just been reduced to a normal gun that they can just download. And then why keep it as a key? Make it a gun, make it a bomb, make it a cluster missile, make it a orbital satellite laser. If you can have that same effect from, just by creating this form, make a new form for it. And what's stopping you from like limiting yourself to the key to Vector Sigma? Find other things. The Decepticons came up with a new death weapon every single week. Some of them worked really well. Print those. Print Megatron's fusion cannon. Can you actually 3D print the Matrix of Leadership and make it work? When you start just boiling down all these legendary artifacts to just ones and zeros, you start to ask questions about all of that, and all of a sudden something that is really special and a really cool callback just kind of becomes mundane, and it opens yourself up to the questions of why don't you do this and that? Well, because the writers, didn't really want you to think about that. So just ignore it, move on. Hey, look, fancy G1 reference. Isn't that cool? Number 8 is a problem you may have noticed if you're watching the Beast Machines episode reviews, solely because the episodes take me a lot longer to talk about than Beast Wars does. And that's because so much more gets crammed in. The pacing of the show is absolutely absurd. They had to tell an entire story in 26 episodes that really feels like it could have been told in 52. It seems like they wanted 52 and only got 26. It's very fast. Every episode is incredibly dense with info. Some episodes more than others. But a lot of times I'll end up watching this show and like I can't even like take a break and like breathe and like just like figure out, okay, this thing with the Viacons, this thing with Megatron, this thing with Primal, this thing with Cheetor, and to get it all at once is just like it inundates you so much that it just like me and a friend watching the show just like kind of got burned out just trying to follow everything that was going on. Now, it is good that a show can keep its plot going and constantly moving, but when you've got like 6 or 7 gears turning at the exact same time, they're gonna start grinding into each other, and they're gonna start grinding you down. Things like Noble Savage, like his introduction happened in one episode, and then the very next episode is the reveal that he's Megatron. And the way they handle the character at the beginning of the episode makes it very obvious what they are going to do with him. Meaning you have exactly, I don't know, 3 minutes of the character before where it's an actual character, between like the ending of the one episode where they introduce themselves and the beginning of the next episode where you see, oh, he's Megatron. Oh, big shock. So it's never given a chance to breathe. It's never given a chance to trick the audience. A filler episode here would have actually benefited everything really well, audience and story as well. This show makes me appreciate filler episodes because it gives you a chance to explore characters and see them do different things. And it gives you a chance to just kind of let things breathe and process the previous episode before you get into another heavy one. Beast Machines constantly tries to be heavy, and as a result, sometimes it can't carry its own weight. There's a trope that this series is guilty of for the sake of constantly bringing up drama and trying to make things a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more uncertain for the entire cast, and that is infighting. Now, sometimes, like in this screenshot, it does happen artificially. More than once they were gripped in a rage for one thing or another. However, in this case, it happens all on their own, too. In things like the weak component Everyone is incredibly hostile at Rat Trap for literally just trying to help. Like, everyone gets angry. In this series, everyone is high strung and everyone snaps at everyone. And it just gets so exhausting to see the heroes constantly bickering with each other, especially characters like Cheetor, Rat Trap, and Primal that have literally gone through an entire war together and never resorted to anything like this. On one hand, you could say this is a much different situation. They're trying to prevent a total genocide on Cybertron. It's, so pressure can get to them. I understand that. But I also understand this is a cartoon for kids. At some point, we don't want to see our heroes constantly bickering at each other and constantly at each other's throats. It gets to the point where they even resort to physical violence against each other just to get them to follow an order, or just to just to ramp up the tension, really. And it's just, I don't know, it makes it hard to root for the heroes when even the heroes are out to get each other. In one episode, Primal actually notes that maybe Megatron is right. Even amongst ourselves, we don't have the harmony that we're speaking of that we want to bring to Cybertron. Only, but Megatron's vision actually does. Maybe Megatron is right about us just being too wild. No! I typed a word in my notes here for this point. The word begins in B, ends with the letter T, and I can't say it on YouTube. But it is, suffice to say, very good description of that particular moment with Primal. The point is, it's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch the heroes fight amongst each other, at least not as often as they do in this show. When it gets to the point where it's hard to root for your heroes, it's gone too far. Now, a lot of these are pretty common observations, but here's one that I've made that, doing some writing myself actually does get to my nerves, because this is just a tail sign of bad writing, and that is the shock moments that the writers constantly go for in this series. So, okay, Tankor turns on Megatron when Primal attempts to touch his spark. It was the first, and Primal mentions that the spark feels familiar. So this is the first time that we have any indication that the sparks that are inside the Viacon Generals are sparks that we know, potentially are missing characters from the main cast of Beast Wars. So this kind of gives us hope that we're going to see Rhinox back. But when Rhinox actually emerges from Tankor properly, he's already gone full megalomaniac. So why did Tankor turn on Megatron after that little spark talk that Optimus had with his inner spark? If he actually did have that goodness in him that would remind you of Tankor or Rhinox, why did he turn out that way when Rhinox finally came back to the surface? I mean, it's to set up a mystery, and it's to set up a shock moment, but when that moment makes you look back and go, okay, now none of that makes sense, then you realize the moment is literally done just for the shock, and the writers were just not paying attention to consistency in these characters or with their eventual intention with them. Thrust randomly starts saving Black Arachnia out of nowhere, which is supposed to clue us in that he's actually Silverbolt. Well, it turns out he's Waspinator, so now none of that makes any sense whatsoever. You could headcanon your way into go, well, maybe Waspinator had a crush on Black Arachnia the whole time. And now that Silverbolt is out of the way, now he's actually acting on it. You shouldn't. Okay, here's the thing. If your head is filling in the story for the writers have done a bad job. All that would have taken is a quick little comedic throwaway line from Waspinator when he was momentarily resurfaced, and you would have explained the whole thing. It would have made sense, but they didn't. They didn't throw that in. It just makes it confusing. So why did Thrust do all of that if it wasn't Silverbolt? And then naturally when Silverbolt is reformatted into Jetstorm, he's not acting anything like he did when he was momentarily awakened as Jetstorm. When he's reawakened, he's acting like himself. He's acting like the normal Silverbolt. But when he's reformatted in Season 2, now he's this dark, brooding Batman type who just loathes himself for what he became. And it comes out of nowhere. Like, why was he acting that way when he was Jetstorm, but once he's reformatted, he's completely different? It's just set up for the shock, and that is not good writing. It makes the overall story make absolutely no sense, and it means you really were just manipulating us for shocking moments when you really had no intention of, like, making your characters consistent. I mean, in the moment, yes, it's great, but as a story as a whole, it opens up massive flaws in your overall plot. While we're talking about the Rhinox heel turn, we might as well cover this part of it or not, because this kind of plays a really important part in the whole shock and awe. Rhinox is a villain now. Is this really a soft reset or not? So, okay, famously, Hasbro wanted a fresh start with a series that new fans could have as jumping on point, so they didn't want it to be too referential to Beast Wars. The edict, regardless of who you heard, it came down from. There was an edict amongst the writing staff not to watch the Beast Wars cartoon before they started doing Beast Machines. They got little notes of things and to reference, and enough to make the story make sense, but missed a lot of nuances and missed a lot of really important things that kind of would have colored the show a little bit more. However, Hasbro did end up feeding different G1 references in that they wanted in Beast Machines, the key to Vector Sigma and the Plasma Energy Chamber being the two most primary examples. And while in the beats of the story those two do make sense, it does mean that inherently you're pulling from G1 canon, but you are also entirely ignoring Generation 1 canon. Think of it like this. Starscream only exists as a ghost in G1's cartoon canon, so we know based on his appearance in Possession that this is G1 cartoon canonical. So when, which makes sense for the Plasma Energy Chamber and the key to Vector Sigma. However, we've delved into the depths of Cybertron and G1, and at no point do we find caves, trees and plants, fossils of old animals. It's entirely mechanical. It's one giant metal ball. So you ignore all of this, you ignore this part of G1 canon, but you keep using these other elements of G1 canon. And it is either canonical or it is not. You can't really have it both ways. And just keeping into the Beast era, things like Rhinox turning into a bad guy only works if you know about Beast Wars and who he was in that show. So is it a necessary tie-in or is it not? If this is a soft reset and you want new people joining into this show, then why incorporate elements that really only make sense if you watch through the first 3 years of Beast Wars? Again, trying to have it both ways. And in this case, yes, you can have it both ways. You can have these character shifts and you can have them make sense. But the proper writing and the proper steps have to be taken. And in this series, they just weren't. And that goes for how canonical this thing is to Transformers history. Is it? Is it not? I frankly don't know at this point. One thing I cannot stand a story doing is taking what came before and completely tearing it down or minimalizing it. In this case, it is minimizing the effect of the Beast Wars in general. So, Optimus Primal keeps trying to push this idea that the Maximals were sent to Earth by destiny, by the Oracle and the Matrix, in order to bring the DNA from their bodies back to Cybertron to help regrow the planet. Okay, let's start with a few facts here. Number one, it was Megatron who went to Earth and the Maximals went in pursuit. So if the Matrix just wanted the DNA, then why not just go to Earth in modern day? Why chase Megatron into prehistoric Earth just to get DNA? And if this is all predestined, which means everything in Beast Wars was supposed to happen the way it did. So you are telling me that the Matrix itself decided that it was going to send these Transformers back to ancient prehistoric Earth to bring, and fight this war amongst themselves just to bring back DNA samples. So you're telling me Dinobot, Tigatron, Air Razor, Transmutate, and every Predacon except for 2 all had to die just so they could bring back a grand total of, what, 8 DNA samples across the 7 characters who came back? That's it? Just for that? You could have sent an entire crew of Maximals down to modern-day Earth and scanned a zoo. Jeez, it's stupid. It's incredibly stupid, and it minimizes everything in Beast Wars when you just treat it as, oh, well, this was all supposed to happen from Destiny. So all those events, everything we went through, it was just to get some monkey DNA on Cybertron? That's it? And the big thing about this is, and what makes this even more infuriating to me, is this never amounts to anything. Ever. At no point do they use the DNA in their bodies to help regenerate Cybertron. At no point does that actually become a part of the plot. You know, it's just this obsession with the show of trying to create deeper meanings in everything they do, and it doesn't make any sense ultimately, and in this case, it doesn't even factor into the overall story. So you're telling me nothing in the Beast Wars mattered except pulling a few strands of DNA out of some bones or some random creatures on the planet and putting them back into Cybertron's DNA pool, which, by the way, is completely pointless because we have caves full of underground bones and fossils and all kinds of things we scan DNA from there. It's why Night Scream exists. So this entire metaphysical Destiny plot that completely kills the importance of Beast Wars, meaningless. And that's not what you want out of a show, especially not a sequel. A sequel should never tear down the original or make it feel like it didn't matter. It's not the first time I've been through this, if you can't tell. But yeah, it's a terrible thing to do to Beast Wars. So there's a big question that's like an elephant in the room to this entire plot, and it's something that I've talked about in the episode reviews, but it's worth pointing out here too. How exactly did Megatron manage to take over the entire planet of Cybertron? So keep in mind, Cybertron is notoriously hard to take over. The Decepticons in G1 held it for literally millions of years. It took the attack on Unicron. It took the attack of Unicron to drive them off planet and for the Autobots to be able to retake the world. And even then, like, they had a hard time holding it. If you follow Japanese G1 continuity, it was only a few years later when the whole thing got blown up. So they didn't exactly do a good job holding it either. So, when Cybertron is supposed to be this difficult to take over, Megatron's original plot involved going back in time with the information on these golden discs, including a message and plans from the original G1 Megatron to wipe out the Autobots before they could wake up in 1984, and thus the Decepticons will have an easy time taking over the Earth and ruling over Cybertron in the future. That's how hard Cybertron is to take over, that they go through those extremes and take those risks in order to actually conquer the planet after the fact. So now Megatron just wipes the entire planet out with a virus he just magically made up. Keep in mind, he landed on Cybertron ahead of the Maximals, but he would have no resources, no allies, no nothing. So somehow, out of absolutely nothing, he managed to cobble together a virus that literally swept over the entire planet. And he didn't just do this from the start. Why did he have to go through the entire Beast Wars time travel thing if it was just as easy as, I have a virus? You're all dead now. If he could Thanos snap the entire planet, why couldn't he do it before? You know, and then we have the drones, and you're telling me Megatron, like, refurbished a factory, started dragging bodies back in one by one until he had enough drones built to start dragging bodies back for him? I mean, possible, but it's the mental image of it is absolutely ridiculous. So no, I don't buy that Megatron could take over Cybertron this way. Nothing he learned or gained in Beast Wars would have given him the ability to do this. They had one transformation lock device, and it certainly wasn't a virus, and it certainly wasn't, planetary scale. He could have won the Beast Wars overnight if he had figured it out at some point then. No, it's a plot element out of convenience. They never explain it, and thus I've never really been convinced that this was like a feasible thing. So maybe there is an explanation, but it's certainly not one that the writers ever gave. A big thing for a major series, especially one telling a serious story, is how it concludes. So yes, we're going to talk about the ending to Beast Machines and how badly that went over. I tell people all the time that a series can be absolutely fantastic. You could have 6, 7, seasons of the best television you've ever watched. If that 8th and final season is absolute trash, no one's going to care about the show anymore. I equate it to this. If you're watching an Olympic gymnast put on the most amazing, uneven bar performance you've ever seen, they are spinning and flipping around on these bars like Sonic the Hedgehog on a sugar binge. It's the most amazing thing. And then they go to dismount. They fly off the bar. They spin around 6 times. At some point, they turn inside out and recombine. And it's amazing. And then they face plant into the ground. Are you going to talk about that performance? No, you're not. The clip that's going to make 10 million views on YouTube in the first day is her face planting into the mat. And that's how it goes. It's how Game of Thrones went so badly. The ending makes everything. You have to stick the landing. It's what killed Voltron, the new Netflix Voltron, for me. The ending sucked. And the ending in this show sucks too. So you've got this big spot, this big field that the Maximals just wake up in, even though they're in completely different parts of the planet. Cybertron has rolling hills now for some reason. They have rolling hills so they can have a horde of Transformers coming over the horizon. It's exactly 4 character models running in like 10 frames a second over the hill in these very bad animation like run loops. And some of them are running diagonally. And it's the most ridiculous, hilarious looking thing you've ever seen, on top of just the fact that the texture work in the scene is absolutely horrible. I understand they're on a limited budget, but there's also better ways of demonstrating that all the sparks are returning to their original bodies than just saying, oh, everyone magically woke up and we were all waiting on the other side of this hill for you. And then there's the fact, okay, so Primal's dead. The main Maximals didn't get to play a part in the ending at all. They all got some big power-up to beat some Viacons, but they all lost, so it didn't really matter. So they didn't get to do anything. It's all up to Primal in the final episode. The final episode is boring, by the way, because it's literally like a 20-minute fight between Primal and Megatron. Primal spends most of it getting punched around, and it's exhausting. And there's even filler. There's filler scenes, like the thing about the Oracle, and supposedly being a stalemate, but all Megatron has to do is go, no, Oracle's mine now. There's no point to that scene. It's just there to pad the time. So it doesn't feel climactic. It doesn't feel like a huge fight, between mortal enemies. It just, no, like most with Beast Wars, or with the Beast Machines. Like, it just feels like it's doing the same thing over and over again. And then poor Waspinator. Oh my god. So Waspinator was a character they couldn't kill off in Beast Wars because he was too loved by fans, so he got to have a happy ending at the end of Season 3. In the end of Beast Machines, he gets to have the most depressing ending. He's stuck in this... Why is he the size of a normal bee? Why does he have thrust head? Are you telling me all the Cybertronians are going to wake up with, like, animal bodies, but they just randomly have a Viacon's head? Whatever Viacon... Like, is that the fate? Is that how this is going to work? Why is he so small? Why does he just get flipped off by Cheetor when, like, he should be celebrating that, everyone survived, like someone else survived from Beast Wars? Even if he is an idiot, like, he's a lovable idiot, and we love him, and I hate what they did to him here. They took away the one happiness that the character got to have. I'm sure I'm going to talk about it again when we get to the episode reviews, but yeah, ending on this show is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And to finish us off, the one thing in Beast Machines that is incredibly apparent throughout everything, no matter how you view the series, no matter how you like it or not, there's one element to it that I think is pretty universal, and the fact that, honestly, the show just takes itself way, way too seriously. It is so obsessed with trying to get in all of these spiritual messages and messages of destiny and trying to make sense of all of this at the same time, trying to come up with this incredibly heavy, super depressing plot. You know, like you're mid-apocalypse trying to tell this story, and it's, you know, and you've got, and everything they do in this show, they insist on adding this deeper layer of meaning. Oh, it's the Matrix wills it, or, you know, the Oracle, it's, you know, something the Oracle destined, or, you know, like, oh, you know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous just how much they try to force into this, like, little shell of, like, it was all preordained and we have to be very serious about this. There's very few attempts at levity in the series. You know, maybe some Viacons do something dumb once in a while, but they don't add to the comedy by switching up the music. It's the same tense, you know, techno music the entire time. There's really, like, very little in the way of, like, humor in the series. It just tries to keep this very dark, very serious tone this entire time. And then you have all these moments that are so mean-spirited. Like, the entire weak component episode is so mean-spirited, there's just no way to actually enjoy what's going on. For me personally, I don't know about you, but the series is filled with things like that, from all the infighting to Primal's spiritual journeys, Megatron going on with his megalomania, watching Rhinox and his megalomania, watching Silverbolt be super moody and depressing. Ultimately, the show is supposed to be for kids because they're trying to sell a toy line to kids. So at some point, it has to be fun. A cartoon has to be fun to watch. You might be able to get engrossed in the story. You might be able to find the story very deep and interesting. But at the end of the day, it has to be fun. You know, you need those moments of levity. You need those filler episodes. You need the story to be, you know, thin enough to be able to take in without having to pause the whole episode afterwards and just, like, sit back and go, ugh, let's break all that down. You've got to be able to put in some kind of break. You have to be able to put in something and not take yourself so seriously. You're giant robots from another planet that transforms into spiders and rats. Have some fun. Doesn't have to be dark and moody and aggressive all the time. You know, you need different tones. You need variety. And that's what the show lacks. It lacks the levity that makes it feel alive. Instead, you just get, well, you get what Megatron wanted. You get a completely serious, sterile environment of a TV show. And that's kind of how I feel. So, it's a very long Here's 10. I had a lot of things to say, but thank you guys for watching through the whole thing. Let me know in the comments below how much you agree with this or not. I imagine there's plenty of Beast Machines fans out there who are going to counterpoint this. This is just me noticing these things, and I gotta get it off my chest. So, thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time.
Yeah, I guess I'll give Bardic to Pain. Pain, my #1 good best friend. You got this.
You're just basically like Caboose at this point.
Just
I'm
like,
church. Oh, God.
That's all right. Let's keep this pain train going. The Caboose is here.
Son of a bitch.
No.
And yeah,
This
you get
makes me
Bardic.
Tucker. I'm quitting.
Gauss, take 2 psychic damage.